Candy wrappers have looked the same for years, and even when they do update their looks, it's usually pretty insignificant. I get that they want to stay recognizable and everything, but if you ask me, I think each one of these brands could use some fresh new packaging. So I'm here to redesign each one to be a bit more interesting, cool, unique, whatever. Welcome back to Fix the World. You guys had some great suggestions as always. Let's start with Kit Kats. Kit Kats have become one of the most popular candy bars in the world. In the US, they're mainly just known for the default milk chocolate, so we're gonna design that one today. But they have a huge variety of flavors in different countries that helps keep them relevant. Anyway, you can probably guess the main suggestion for this one. We gotta add a cat onto the Kit Kat. We'll definitely get to that, but first I have a couple ideas I want to go through first. Now, something you'll notice about candy packaging and just food packaging as a whole is they almost always have the food on the front so that you know what you're getting into. I respect the decision, but this isn't the most aesthetic way to do it, I don't think. Instead, I've got a better idea. As you surely know, these come in packs of 4, with each one breaking off into individual strips. And I think this opens the opportunity for a really cool design if we want to emphasize just one of these Kit Kats. Normally, food packaging tries to make the food look as appetizing as possible, which usually means it's a little unrealistic. So we're just gonna put this front and center, plain and simple. This is what you're gonna get. And that's obviously actual size, which is pretty neat. Anyway, let's just start getting some text in here. I've covered the Mandela effect a few other times on this channel, but this is a really good example where a lot of people remember the Kit Kat logo having a hyphen in between it. But as you can see, it's not there, and I'm not sure if it should be there or not. Maybe I'll decide once we find a good font for this. I think we want to emphasize the blockiness of these bars. Obviously, the original font does do that, but I just want to shake it up a little. I'm kind of thinking we switch to all caps instead of having the lowercase, and I had an idea to make this look super clean. We're gonna have it come up from the top of the bar all the way to the top of the bar, like so. Maybe a hyphen would actually be pretty good. Let's line up this edge real nice. Then to have it stick out a little more, we're gonna get a stroke on it and maybe a little shadow. Ooh, that kind of looks clean. I like having the little space between that K and the A, but it looks a little messy with them being so connected like that. So my solution is we're just gonna make a little divot that cuts in like that. Then plain white is a good color, but I do want to experiment a little bit. I kind of want to take a little inspiration from that beige here. That's pretty good, but oh, I got a better idea. Bevel and contour. Ooh, that's looking clean. I actually really like that. As we were saying before, these companies love to show off the insides of these candies. Obviously, the highlight is that these are crispy wafers. But instead of dissecting this bar we have here, I have a better idea, at least for this design. I need a photo of some wafer, which I think is supposed to be this way, not this way. I could be wrong, but I think that'll look a little nicer anyway. So let's drop this in there and rotate it. You want to perfectly line it up with the grid as much as possible. Just like that. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. I feel like this cutoff just looks kind of weird, so I'm gonna get a different color on both sides of the Kit Kat bar. You know, just nice and simple. Gotta make sure everything is lined up nicely. Ooh, before I forget, we gotta make sure the text on the chocolate matches the text on the bar. Let me shrink this down. Let's see if we can get rid of this pretty easily, hopefully. Nice. And we gotta mess with it a little bit. Okay, getting somewhere. I did make the text a little wider. It's not super noticeable, but it just stands out a little more on the actual chocolate. Then finally, the main event, we gotta add a cat, of course, in this negative space right here. I did have a couple different ideas for this. One is that we have the cat behind the bar like this. Its mouth would be around it, biting into this bar. I don't know how that looks though. Apparently, the original concept for Kit Kats was a bar that you could take to work. The main appeal being that it was so thin that you could fit it easily with all your like binders and paper and stuff, I guess. This is gonna be funny. Get a little nose in there. Ooh, maybe we just take something like this. This might work out a little better than mine. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I'll definitely mess with this a little more later. Here's the final version. Cool, moving on to the fruity side of things, we're going with Starburst. We're gonna do the same sort of thing we did with Kit Kats and take the title much more literally. While the round, juicy vibe of Starburst does fit the candy pretty well, the title Starburst is kind of sick, and I think they gotta take advantage of that in their packaging. And while these long packages are probably the most common, there's not a ton of room to play with, so instead I'm gonna change one of these bags. I don't know what it is about just that clean gradient background, but it looks pretty nice. I do kind of have a vision for this a little bit. get a new font in here, something spacey, space. Anyway, instead of horizontal text, we're gonna do vertical text. Okay, that looks pretty clean. And hear me out on this. We're gonna add a big star. Wow. Not your traditional looking star, but I think some uniqueness is needed since literally every star is just drawn the same. Okay, this is gonna look a little bit messy for just a second, but just trust the process. Then we're gonna get a big rectangle, something like this. I'm gonna separate this into a S and Starburst. The S, of course, fitting nicely into that big star, and the Starburst will follow along, and we're gonna burst it out like so. That's not the most legible text in the world. It'll be fine, it's fine. There's a specific thing in design called sunburst, which obviously sounds very similar, but it's just this design with the lines going out. So I think we do a similar thing around this star, just getting a nice sort of gradient of colors. I think it's pretty well known that pink is the most popular Starburst flavor. I know they have packages of just pink ones, but I think maybe we just emphasize that a little more in the original. It's gonna bother me if these edges don't line up actually. And I want the star to stick out a little more compared to the rest of the trail. Maybe a nice drop shadow sort of thing. Ooh, that's kind of fun. Or better idea, we're gonna make these gradients. I was doing a bit of research and I found out how Starburst got its name. The burst part of it is just because the burst of flavor that comes when you bite into it and stuff. But supposedly the word star was just to draw more interest during the space race in
1967.
I mean, clearly it worked. These are super popular now. But I don't know, that seems like almost malicious that they just threw in that word with no connection at all. So it's good we're getting some sort of star theming in here. I think that actually looks pretty clean. We definitely have to mess with that text a little though. First, I do have an idea for the S specifically. I want to emphasize that it's part of the star rather than just being an S inside of a star. I'm not gonna lie to you, that is not how I wanted it to look. Then as a nice final touch, we're gonna add just a few more stars in the background here. Of course, having a very similar shape to our original star. If you're relatively new to the channel, you might categorize me as a graphic design YouTuber. But if you've been following me for a long time, you know that that's not really what I do. These videos were supposed to all just be jokes, but now I've locked myself into actually trying to design good stuff. I don't know if that's necessarily a good or bad thing. I feel like I have to take these a lot more seriously, but I like to think I'm still making it kind of funny. Like, should I lean harder into the legit graphic design world, or should I try to make it funnier and bad? Anyway, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, I'm just gonna do whatever I want. Can't forget to add some of the subtext. Again, I'll tweak this a little more later. Okay, so the main thing is I'm just gonna add the subtext of the calories and whatever. And sadly, I think we do have to shrink this down a little just to keep the top of the star in the bag even after you rip it off. Maybe I can get some more stars up there real quick. Nice, there we go. Then let's add a little fruit choose text. But the main reason I'm coming back to you as future me is so that we can redesign one of these little wrappers. I can't really find any high quality photos, but as you can imagine, it's just gonna look something like this. Honestly, that looks like a really good app logo if they ever wanted to make like a mobile game or something, I don't know. And let's not forget to get the little text underneath. Cherry chew. And I'm actually gonna have it bend the opposite way to fit with the curve of this star rather than the curve of the drop. Anyway, here's the final versions of both of those. I think that turned out pretty solid, actually. On to another bite-sized fruity item, Mike and Ike's. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I feel like Mike and Ike's are a top-tier candy. They've got a perfect little shape. They're nice to chew on, taste nice. What else can you ask for? This is the current look of Mike and Ike's, but when I was researching, I came across the past design that I remember when I was growing up. I don't know when this one was on the market, but if you ask me, it kind of gives some Y2K vibes. And with things like digital cameras and fashion items from the early 2000s popping up again, I think Mike and Ike's should not only dip their toes back in, but full on dive into that Y2K aesthetic. I do want to maintain that sort of wavy background, so let's try to find something like that. These edges are a little too sharp compared to this, so I'm gonna blur it out a little bit. I'm just gonna search Y2K and see what pops up. Yeah, like these shapes are gonna be nice. For some reason, I thought it was Mike and Ike with the little ampersand. That's my own little personal Mandela effect. Anyway, I kind of want that bubbly text that kind of fits with these shapes we've got, which I believe I could do with the bevel and emboss. Yeah. Maybe it would be better if the background background's just black. I don't know. We'll experiment. We'll see. Fit these letters together however we can. Minecraft text, sure. Maybe we can just get like a little shape cut out of this. I don't know if you guys remember, but they had this little ad campaign where they would sell just mics and just Ikes. What was that about, man? This was in 2012. Mike and Ike were breaking up. No. But looks like they sorted it out within a year. Maybe we should make this all centered, actually. There's a lot of empty space otherwise. Let's get just some floating Mike and Ikes in the background like the other ones have. Oh, this is so goofy. Speaking of me going back to bad graphic design. And here's the final package. I actually kind of dig it. We got 2 really nice and clean designs and 1 really sick one. We have a pretty solid start, but we've still got a bunch more to go through. But looking at all this candy and thinking about eating all this sugar is making me feel sick. But good news, you can eat as healthy as ever with today's sponsor, Factor. Eating healthy comes with a lot of downsides. There's so much time and stress in meal planning, shopping, and cooking, and eating out is just way too expensive. But with Factor, you can get cheaper, fresh, and ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You can choose from a weekly menu of 35 options, including vegan and protein plus, and they're always fresh, never frozen. I normally eat the exact same thing every day because I just don't want to think about it, but having such a quick and convenient option meant I had something new to try while still having plenty of time to go outside, live life, you know? Before trying it, my initial thoughts were surely a refrigerated meal like this can't taste that good, but I'm being serious when I say these exceeded my expectations. Every meal was actually so tasty. So to give it a try, head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code OATS50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. That's code OATS50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders. Anyway, next we got Milky Way. I know you know where this is going. Same sort of deal as the first 2. We're gonna make it a little more literal and add the Milky Way galaxy sort of theme. But turns out they're actually already doing that. And I'm not talking about the swirl in the background here. I'm talking about the international versions outside of the US and Mexico. This packaging looks sick. You might notice that the inside looks a little different though. Apparently the international version of Milky Way is the same thing as the American Three Musketeers. Like seriously, this one looks so bland compared to these. Anyway, I don't want to just totally rip these off. And since we already have that kind of minimal space theme with Starburst, I want to make something a little different, maybe making the graphics a little more realistic or something. So let's start with the background. Let's just get some cool looking space. Let's see, milk swirl. That worked surprisingly well. Can we get a caramel splash? Caramel swirl? Yeah, we can. Let's go. Maybe we get the NASA font just to keep with the theme as much as possible. Or you know, what if... Okay, change of plans. You see the NASA logo right here? Imagine it's just that, but the little swirls are the milk and the caramel. Let's grab this, and we gotta warp these around to fit within those lines. Milky Way is essentially just the halfway point between Snickers and Three Musketeers, just with one ingredient difference between all of them. I think it's funny that people care about each ingredient enough that they separated them into 3 separate products. That looks so sloppy. But you know, that's a funny reference. I'ma stick to it. There you go. Nice. Now jumping into the world of sour candy, we got the most popular one, Sour Patch Kids. Apparently the original name for these was Mars Men, but we're not going back to that. We can't have a 3rd space themed one. People say they changed the name to Sour Patch Kids because of the success of Cabbage Patch Kids at the time, which these have definitely surpassed in popularity. In my mind, when you use the word sour as an adjective to describe kids or people, it feels like that can translate over to punk. So similar to the Mike and Ike box, we're gonna fully dive into the aesthetic, but this time with the kind of paper cutout punk vibe. I feel like you gotta have that newspapery background, but you wanna keep the color, and you gotta get a font that looks kind of like those cutout letters from different magazines and stuff. We'll just mess with the text, kind of patch it around. Maybe we get one of the Sour Patch Kids that has like the face and everything. Yeah, that red one's iconic. And you always gotta cover up the eyeballs with some tape or something. You see that all over YouTube too. I wanna put this guy in like a little Polaroid. We're gonna take out the polygonal lasso tool. Shout out to last episode. I don't really know where I'm going with this one. I don't know if this one's turning out very good. Here's the final one anyway, but good news, I have a backup plan. And of course, that's with our first bonus candy. When I was a kid, I used to think Sour Patch Kids were for kids, and then Sour Patch Watermelon were for adults. Because as you can see, they didn't have the word kids in there. So I thought those were like the adult exclusives. So I think it'd be kind of fun to run with that idea and make some Sour Patch Watermelon bags that are catered towards adults rather than kids. Usually catering towards adults means catering towards a healthy crowd. So you'll see brands like these pop up where they're trying to act a little healthier and make you feel a little better about yourself. The one thing about these that does bother me though is that they're the prime example of real life clickbait. Like these perfect looking little watermelons are just not what you get in the bag. It's fine, they still taste good, but just like be more upfront about what they look like. I don't know. We'll actually get a picture of one of the candies in here. We'll get like a little star sort of background behind it. Almost a sunburst sort of thing, like I was saying earlier. We'll warp this around so that we can get these all around it nicely. Maybe we don't even need the leaves, actually. Sour Patch. I feel like making it plural sounds a little healthier. I don't know why. Maybe we get a little oval behind it. Not what I was originally imagining, but it works. Here's the final version, and of course, I got another bonus candy for you. Yay! This time it's something that technically doesn't even exist yet. This is a genius product idea, but it's based off the existing brand, Nerds. These have been around forever, and then people just slowly started thinking and talking about them less and less, until out of nowhere, Nerds gummy clusters started popping off. These are seriously one of the most popular candy, at least from what I've seen. These weirdly got really popular several years after they actually released, but you might also remember the other Nerds product that these were based off of, the Nerds Rope. Now, hot take, I actually like these better than the clusters. The problem is, as of now, they're always sold in the single ropes. So my idea is that we make bags just as big as these gummy cluster ones, but filled with the Nerds ropes instead of the clusters. These packages already look fine. This is more about just making the new product. I don't know about you guys, but I think these little mascots are so cute. They look like if Yoshi's design was based off a kiwi. I don't know, it's a winning combo in my book. I think the concept of Nerds is so funny. It's literally sugar coated in sugar. Like basically every candy is already made of pure sugar, but it's just so funny that they don't even try to hide it at all. Let's just get one of these guys standing there. A lot of you guys wanted me to put Nerds on the Nerds bags, you know, as in this guy. Anytime I see that emoji, I just get so bothered and annoyed. I know that's the whole point of the meme, but I just can't do it. I can't do it. There you go. New Nerds product. If they make that, they'll make $1 billion. Guaranteed. Well, anyway, those turned out pretty good. I think the first few were probably the best, but there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of fun. Anyway, Kit Kat and Starburst are pretty close, but here's me putting my favorite on the globe for the tradition. And for next episode, let's pick some country flags. Let me know what world flags need a redesign and how you would do it. Most of them are just a couple stripes or something. Let's make it more interesting. Leave a comment for that or anything else you want me to fix in the future, and you might see me use it in the next episodes. I see those suggestions easier if you're a channel member. Thank you guys for the support. Thanks again to Factor for sponsoring this video, and subscribe.